and hope that we all get something out of this and just really enjoy this presentation. I first want to just do a quick introduction of who I am. Justin Price. I am the president-elect of the Forest Products Society. We have some dynamic speakers for us today. Our first speaker will be Alicja, and I have been practicing this name, and I'm probably going to mess it up. My thick Southern tongue is not very good at Polish names, but Alicja Kacprzak. How did I do on that one, Alicja? Did I do okay on that? And with that, I would certainly welcome you to come in and give us your presentation on circular concepts in forest-based industry. Alicja has just been a fantastic resume, a forestry officer at the Food and Drug Organizations of the United Nations. She has a specialized topics in the circular and bio-based economy, sustainability and employment. She's worked with the World Economic Forum on environmental initiatives, on green growth, climate change, and renewables. She's been in the private sector, in the food processing industry and recycling, and how you use these byproducts from bio-based industries. It's just a wealth of knowledge in the educational as well, and a master's in economic, a master's in business management. It's just fantastic to see her work, and I'm really excited to introduce her. Alicja, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Justin, and so great to be here. I'm very happy to be here, and very happy also to share some of my work, and hopefully you will find it interesting and also relevant to what you are doing. So let me first share my presentation. I hope you can see it already. Just please quickly confirm.
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, excellent. So today I'm going to talk about the key findings of our study, the recent study that is coming this year. It has not yet been published, but I'm just in the process of finalizing that. And I'm very excited to show you a lot of information that is quite cross-cutting. So you will see that I will skip some slides in the hope that the presentation will be shared later. So if you are interested to discover some of these concepts, you can use these slides as a starting point for further research, because I understand that we have different stakeholders participating in this event, and that's why I wanted to share the diversity of knowledge that we have. And I'm very excited to have been working on this study and now to share you the results of it. So in my presentation, I'm going to start with the circular economy and the concepts that relate to that, because it is not a homogeneous concept. And then we are going to talk more in detail about specific forest-based value chains, and I'm going to talk about wood in construction, wood use in furniture manufacturing, paper manufacturing, about also cellulose-based fibers and plastics, and I'm going to come to conclusions and recommendations. So first, let me start with circular economy and related concepts. As you know, it is important to drive into the circular economy from the current model that we have, because we have globally some urgent needs to address, and they include primarily the increasing demand for raw materials, and we have increasing demand also and pressures on different ecosystems, terrestrial ecosystems and also ocean ecosystems, and we are facing pollution and waste that are problematic at the scale that we no longer can control it. So circular economy has been developed and has been promoted recently for a number of years already in different parts of the world. I would say that I see this this concept very well developing in Europe, and particularly in the European Union, but I also hear a lot of interest from China and also recently from the US. Of course, there are different understanding of that, and it has been created as a response to the linear model that in itself is not a bad model because it delivered already high standards of living and wealth in some parts of the world, but we realized that it is no longer possible to continue based on this model because the costs, the socio-economic costs and environmental costs are not possible to bear anymore at the global scale. So we are moving slowly towards the circular economy. And I wanted to show you the results of the circularity gap report that has been prepared since 2018. It is a Dutch based NGO called Circle Economy that has developed a methodology, and based on that the report that is telling us that today the global economy is only at 8.6% circular, and compared to 2018, for instance, it was already 9%. So we can see that this process is very slow. It is also not consistent. That means that we can also step back in that. And because of that, we have to sustain this process on the regular basis. So a circular economy, as I said, is not a homogeneous concept. There are many concepts related to that. And another study also from the Dutch University in 2017 discovered that there are at least 114 different definitions that have been already reported in different literature, which means it's a lot. But we can tell that, that when we talk about circular economy, there is a general understanding that we do not only talk about circular flow of materials, but we also talk about the carbon cycle and the circularity of it and sustainability. We talk also about energy cycle, about the need for regeneration of natural systems and the need for circular design. And it is also important to mention that circularity should not be confused with sustainability, because there are many cases, which I will also show you later, that there can be some environmental and socioeconomic externalities related to a circular economy as much as they are related to linear economy. And of course, recently, what is important is to say that this bioeconomy component has been developing, and it's also seen as a very important part of a circular economy, ensuring this sustainability. So as I mentioned that I will go through some slides in a more fast mode, I wanted to share with you some concepts that exist here. And there is one that is very much used at the international level, also at the United Nations. It is Ellen MacArthur Foundation circular economy model. I will not go into details. I'll just show you that as a picture. And then also in comparison to European Environment Agency circular economy model, that you can see already that this is very different perception. There we had a separation between the biological cycles and technical cycles, while in this one you can see one cycle when both the bio-based resources and also fossil resources enter the system, and then we also have some waste residues going to the landfill, all being incinerated, creating emissions. And further, you have also the model that has been recently used more in this. This has been developed by United Nations Environment Program. It was also used for our study. And here you can see that we talk about different cycles between different actors. And you have business to business cycle, user to business cycle, and user to user. Another slide also in which I don't want to spend too much time, but I thought it could be useful for those of you who are interested, is to look at these guiding principles of circular economy. We hear a lot, and we see in the literature many of these R words that sometimes can be confusing. Some of them are very intuitive, but some really we don't know what that means. But each of them has different meaning, and they represent the principles to be respected if we want to follow the transition towards circular economy. So let me go straight now to circularity in forest-based industries. So when we look at the specifically the forest sector and the use of wood, on which we focused our study, we can tell that wood is a biodegradable resource that can be used in circular manner. That is obvious because nutrients return to the biosphere. But what is interesting to observe, that means that in the new system of circular economy, once we get there, the forest sector, the forest, the wood, and the forest sector can play really important role, much more prominent than right now, because it can be a starting point to many value chains in many industries. Also, when we look at the forest-based industries, we talk more about cascading use of wood rather than circular use of wood. It is naturally related to the nature of wood because it cannot be recycled in the same way as glass is or aluminium is. Also, when we look at circular value chains, in the forest sector, it is particularly important not only to look at the material flow, but also at carbon cycles and energy cycles, because these cycles really present the full picture, and sometimes this picture can be alternated if we do not take them into consideration. Also, there is already a good practice in resource management installed in the forest sector and related industries, and that results not from the wish of transitioning towards circularity, but more it is related to the need for economic viability. So that is, of course, much more important, and also long established than the circularity itself. And obviously, we cannot talk about circularity in forest-based industries without sustainable forest management. So we need to ensure regeneration of forest systems. In the context of this study, we looked at wood in particular. We had to, as it was first the study of this type, we had to impose some limitations to the analysis, and we look at industry value chains and not so much and natural forest cycles, because we believe these are well covered also in different literature. So we wanted to focus on this of the analysis of value chains. And we looked primarily also for simplicity on material flow, but we included carbon and energy where it was relevant. And also we stated throughout the entire content of the study, the text, that circularity only makes sense if it's economically viable and there are no environmental externalities. There is no need, or this is not really recommended, to push for circularity, for following of this conceptual models if they are not really aligned with real life and the reality of business, and also the good condition of environment. And also what is interesting to notice that we discovered during our analysis is that circular economy models do not consider bioenergy production as circular, because they consider that energy as such cannot be circulated. While in the forest sector, naturally, we consider bioenergy cycles as very natural and circular. So let's go into the wood and construction analysis more in detail. So we looked first of all at the sawn wood and as a beginning of the value chain. And the observation that we make is that transition to circularity requires system innovation and coordination across supply chain from primary to tertiary processing, because it is quite common that the value chain actors do not communicate along value chains. They communicate only at specific stages of value chains. So for instance, in the sawmills, there could be bioenergy plants established that incinerate waste instead of that waste being sent somewhere else for cascading use. So again, if we apply the circularity model, cascading use has a priority. However, if you take into consideration the carbon cycle and other externalities, then the circularity perspective changes. So in that sense, we look at the limitations to circularity or pushing for circular solutions when we take into consideration the economic viability of that process, environmental externalities related to transport, so emissions, and also additional resources that are needed for recycling, such as energy and water. And obviously there is a problem or issue of contamination of waste streams, which may prevent their reuse and upcycling or recycling of these residues. Then we also have to look for the design for sustainability, and there we see that the stronger collaboration in industrial ecosystems is needed. because often different actors of these value chains do not visualize the product at all stages. So we have different objectives at the design process, then we have different objectives at the building phases, and then we have different objectives when we consider the users and then potentially also recycles of this material. Then another aspect is, of course, the design for disassembly to ensure that buildings can be dismantled for recovery of systems, components, and materials. The offsite construction is, in that sense, an interesting solution, because when we design something that is digitally precise and we minimize waste, then in that sense, of course, it is a circular solution. However, that applies to new buildings. And while the majority of buildings already exist, so we have to think about how we can refurbish them, upgrade them, and how we can do it using specific solutions so that we can also then recycle the materials used. So there are some limitations related to that. So of course there is some kind of conflict between using the treatments for prolonged use, which can contribute to pollution, and vis-a-vis, for instance, designing something to be dismantled and recycled. And in that sense, also we observe that some materials used for treatment of wood in construction are already renewable, but this trend could be scaled up when economically viable, because it's not everywhere yet. So in terms of waste streams, we have some policies banning wood landfilling, and they provide some framework for more reuse of waste streams. But today there is high demand for the waste streams in wood panel industry and also in energy sectors, and these do not encourage development of other markets. And also the infrastructure for recovery is not well developed, and mainly because it is not economically viable. And many recovery operations require manual work because we do not have automatized systems for sorting and treatment. In the future, potentially, yes, we can automatize these systems and standardize the collection processes, but still, as we see it now, it seems that there will not be so much waste of good quality that can be then reprocessed for further use in, let's say, upper quality applications. And we are also looking into the possibility of creating an international wood waste classification that could standardize the waste streams, improve the data collection on that so we can see what is the situation, and also contribute to the trade of waste streams. Now, I know I speak a bit fast, but I have a lot of material, so stop me anytime as well and ask me to accelerate or maybe skip some parts if needed. So I will go now to wood and furniture manufacturing. First, I wanted to start with looking at the furniture waste in municipal waste, and I was able to find information from the Environment Protection Agency, which combines the furniture and wood packaging waste in the USA. And you can see that most of it, more than two-thirds, it's still landfilled. It's not a very good sign. I think in Europe we have better statistics, mainly thanks to the landfill directive that also encourages other uses of wood rather than landfilling. And if you look at the level of combusted material, that also you can see that this number could be improved, and naturally, ideally, recycling could be also improved. But again, there are all these limitations related to infrastructure and the state in which the waste is when it's at the end of life. So furniture manufacturing, we look at first of all, we look at the sustainable sourcing of raw material, which is the starting point, and we should increase, sourcing from recycled wood. And if it comes from virgin wood, then certainly from sustainably managed forest. Product design is very important to keep the use, prolong the use of specific furniture. For instance, now we have this modular furniture that could be used in different applications, and that of course prolong its life. Or we can plan for dismantling and recyclability immediately. So if it is a low-cost furniture, that is not supposed to last for long. We want to change it, that it should be done in a way that it could be recycled easily and with, let's say, low cost or low chemical treatment as well. And in that case, we noticed that in other sectors, there is already extended producer responsibility principle that is applied, but in the furniture industry, it is not yet in place. There are some companies that are using it in the, let's say, on the pilot basis, but such regulations certainly would improve the situation. And then we also look at the post-consumer furniture waste, and there are limitations because to increase the circularity, because end users are not given guidance on how to repair the furniture. They are not provided with spare parts. There are no developed systems of repair services provided by the producer. Repair and refurbishment services could be put in place. However, there's again limited infrastructure for reuse, repair and recycling, and there's a low demand for second-hand furniture due to availability of low-cost products which are easy to transport, assemble and dispose of. And also, not a minor factor, that this sector is more and more impacted by fashion as well. So we want to change our interior, depending on the season, and not keep furniture for many years. Market drivers for collection, reuse, and furniture take-back are weak. They are not developed. There's also an issue related to transport and labor costs, which make turning the furniture for reuse more expensive and really not interesting from the perspective of the market. And wood waste, again, in the furniture is often contaminated with hazardous substances, which make the recycling more complicated. Now, if I go to paper manufacturing and we look at the circularity, again, starting with what are the rates of the recycling, we can see that this is certainly much better because here more than 2/3 is actually recycled. I think we can still do better, especially if we look at the landfill part of almost more than a quarter. Then I think we could still go into the combustion more, and of course, ideally to recycling, but these numbers could certainly be improved. Now, as regards to paper recycling, it's relatively well implemented. Because we have standard and automated sorted processing, so the cost is not very high compared to other sectors. Again, the high rates of recycling are not driven by circularity, but rather the interest to improve profit margins where it is possible. And despite high recycling rates, still reducing paper waste remains an important objective. For instance, if we take into consideration the packaging industry, there is still so much that can be done to actually not to produce at all waste and not to think later about how to recycle it. There are also some limitations related to that. So again, the paper and paperboard are commonly printed on and coated by a variety of chemicals, which are not easy to get rid of, and they limit the recycling possibilities of paper, and of course the health impact as well. So circular paper production, also when we look at that process, that we know that water and energy are also two biggest resource inputs in the paper making process apart from pulp. And because of that, increased resources efficiency could be achieved by considering reusing water in multiple production cycles and under certain conditions, of course, which I mentioned here. So again, we have to look at the environmental impact of such operations and also the cost. The paper and the pulp sector could partner more with related actors. Again, it seems like they are still quite disconnected, and they do not consider together that after they use these products, the paper should be recycled. So there is no this aspect is not taken into consideration when designing the inks, glues, and so on. So then it is a problem for recycling. And policy measures that encourage reuse of paper will succeed only if the market for recycled papers products function well, and if segregation and disposals can be done in a cost-efficient manner. So nothing new again. And then we look into the cellulose-based fibers and plastics. So very new, I would say, sectors, industries, but also that link more and more to forest as an alternative for the raw material for fibers. So cellulose fibers may deliver resource efficiency compared to synthetic fibers in terms of biodegradability, and to cotton in terms of land and water footprint. However, today, circularity of viscose, cotton, and polyester value chain depend on the emphasis of different criteria and life cycle analysis studies, and these are often prepared by the respective businesses themselves. So the truth is that today we do not have a very good overview, objective overview, where this sustainability and circularity hides, and actually which are the most sustainable choices as regards the use of different textile fibers. And fiber market is in addition highly globalized and complex, involves many regulations and understanding of circularities in different countries, and because of that also of sustainability. So this is very difficult to manage this market and to control it. Then as regards the circularity today, as we can see, we are talking more about the use and cascading use rather than recycling, because less than 1% of textiles recovered for production of new clothing. So that would mean recycling. Then less than 12 is actually cascaded use, and 73, so a lot, a big percentage is actually landfilled or incinerated. So again, a lot to do to increase the circularity in that sector. So as regards this recycling, current recovery technologies we are learning allow already for 50% of raw cellulose fibers to be replaced with alternative feedstocks. That means recovered fibers from agriculture, municipal waste, recycled textiles, and other sources. However, the recovery of these irregular material streams with inconsistent quality may be economically and environmentally unsustainable and commercial scale. And I have personally not heard of any commercial scale of these applications. I only heard and saw presentations of in the laboratory how this can be done. Of course, it is a very promising alternative, but again, not operational yet, hopefully in the future. Today, most garments are produced from a mix of synthetic and natural fibers. That's another challenge. Improving capacity to recycle such fibers is essential, because when you have a mix of fibers, you also have to think about sourcing chemical treatment so they can be turned into fibers that are durable and can be used again to produce sustainable clothes. There is also a use of hazardous chemicals, as we know, in that industry, for instance, for dyeing of textiles. So when we produce the textiles, we use these hazardous chemicals and create pollution. And now if we come to recycling, that we have to take off these dyes from the fibers, which again can draw us into the process that is polluting. So we actually pollute twice, to get the dyeing into the fiber and to get it out. So again, more analysis is needed on case by case if this is actually sustainable or not. Are we creating actually a problem for environment? So again, no circularity at any price. We have to analyze all these different aspects. As regards the consumption, so production and consumption are particularly interlinked in this industry. Production is subject to demand generated by fashion, and fast fashion is shaping consumption patterns. So they are really interconnected, and it seems to be a vicious circle. Therefore, before considering other circular approaches, reducing production and consumption is a must. So it is not, again, thinking how we can recycle that, but how we can produce less to produce less waste. Increased traceability, improved trust in brands, and helps consumers become aware of the environmental impact of the products they buy. And I think this should be more promoted by different policies and regulations in the countries and also at the international level. And then I will talk about circularity of cellulose-based plastics. So we move from fibers to plastics. So while the global demand for bio-based plastic has increased, they still represent a small niche market. So if you can imagine a European Union that is heavily promoting these solutions, on that market, it is only 1% of all the plastics. And cellulose-based plastics are only one type of bio-based plastics and themselves represent a highly heterogeneous segment of the sector. Again, that poses, of course, challenges to the recycling. They are manufactured using softwood as a dominant raw material, and it is important to note that not all of them spontaneously decompose in natural environment. Some only break down in industrial composting facilities with adapted temperature and atmospheric conditions. So again, it is not so automatic that these solutions are circular and also sustainable. There is investment needed in infrastructure and also in standardization of quality. So while these bioplastics are better than petrochemical plastics, bioplastics require improved waste management and recycling infrastructures to be considered circular. Today, we have the solution that is interesting, but we cannot tell that the value chains are circular, because also, for instance, if you see or use a bioplastic, it says biodegradable, but you don't know where to dispose it. You don't know what to do with it, so that to be able as a consumer to close this loop and actually so that material can be reused. That also requires regulations. Sorting and reprocessing technologies have been developed, but they need to be implemented at large scale. There is a need for further standardization and quality certification to ensure bioplastic quality, recyclability, and biodegradation at the large scale. So let me come to conclusions. Again, so this study, we recognize it's a first of this type of overview, and you can see we cover a lot of sectors and a lot of topics, so this relatively general level. But we aimed to look at the concepts, so very theoretical models, and see how these principles and models apply to forest-based industries. And I think in that, I must say that I have impression that we covered that quite well. Although the focus of analysis has mainly been on material flow, because we could not cover everything in such a study. I think each of these aspects could be done in a separate study. The study demonstrated that the transition to circular economy requires systemic transformation across entire value chains, and taking into account forest regeneration cycle, carbon cycle, and energy cycle. That also circularity requires new business models, connections across sectors and companies, redefining of product design, of manufacturing and consumption. And I think in a nutshell, we can say that circular economy is about value chains. It is not about the sectors as we know it today in the linear economy. It is about value chains. So in that sense, we have to rethink the entire system. And also each value chains represents its own sets of limitations, challenges, and opportunities. And they can be identified further only based on case studies analysis, and at this general level we were not able to do that. However, in recommendations, I can tell you that we are planning to do so. So just to give you a background, that in the United Nations, what we do, we provide information for policymaking. We do not influence the policymaking. We do not, everything is voluntary, so countries take this information, but we provide recommendations about what kind of analysis can be done further, so we have better information and we can better inform policymaking. And as a result, in this study, we thought about specific tools for policymaking, and that means, for instance, a development of one specific definition of what circular economy means in the forest sector, because we have so many understanding of circular economy itself, but it would be interesting to get closer to the understanding what the circularity and circular economy means in the forest sector, and maybe we could agree at the UN what that means for everybody. Then we also, building on the fact that circularity does not equal sustainability, we recommend further analysis of environmental and social synergies and trade-offs, that occur when we move to the circular economy, and this should be done based on case studies, because some details can only be typical to specific situations, and they can only be spotted if you go to the level of specific case studies and situations. Also, we thought about recommending a preparation of good practice guide on how to collaborate in an industrial ecosystem to enhance sustainable use of all resources in the forest sector, because and forest-based industries, because it is not about using wood, but also, for instance, do we use less wood, but that means we need to use more water, or do we need to use more energy? What is the impact of these processes on the environment? And also we thought about developing a strategy for the implementation of circular economy principles in forest-based industries. Again, this is to create a blueprint, some kind of path which we could use to the transition to circular economy, again, on the voluntary basis, like a menu in the restaurant, and countries pick up what suits them, what is relevant to their local economies, to the needs of their industries. Further, we also thought about the good practice guide on how to sustain links between forest and forest-based industries in the context of increased demand for wood. Because again, we talk a lot about promoting circular solutions and also bio-based solutions, which imply increased use of wood. But we should not forget that there is no circularity or sustainability in any system if we do not take care about forests and the regeneration of forests. So we have to manage forests in the sustainable manner, and also ensure the preservation of ecosystems so they can regenerate and provide their resource in the long term. And finally, we thought about making an assessment of national priorities and needs in transitioning to a circular economy, so that we can advise countries as they want on the individual basis to look for solutions at the national level. So with all that, I would like to thank you very much, and I hope it was not too much information, not too fast, but please excuse me, I was very excited to show you all that, because I think there's so much interesting information there. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Fantastic presentation there, and really happy to see the work you've done there, and I'm excited to learn more about the study. I just had a quick question. I assume the study is available through the UN or through you directly, and what you've done?
So we, for the moment, have a draft available, because we shared it with member states. So yes, it's a public good. However, we are finalizing the study, and it will be available, I think, around October on our website. So it will be accessible to everybody.